coming or what?
What's up, Goth Gamer Nation and Goth Hunters, and welcome to Darkened Streams, wherein I review every single one of the 327 episodes of Supernatural, or however many YouTube allows before shutting me down. Got another golden episode of Darkened Streams coming your way. What did we learn in the last episode? Listen, we all care about the health and well-being of the Winchesters, but all I'm saying is, get comfortable having them around. Even though we live in a world where monsters, angels, demons, and ghosts are real, man is still the greatest asshole of all. And finally, a lot of short haircuts in the early 2000s. Just an observation. Season 1, Episode 13, entitled Route 666, was written by Brad Buckner and Eugenie Ross Lemming. This is the only writing credit for these two in Season 1, but starting in Season 7, they become regulars all the way until the show's conclusion. They've been writing together since the 70s and had previously written for Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman back when CW was WB. Who we got another last time director in Paul Shapiro. Sorry to see him go, as he does have that most honorable distinction of having directed an episode of The X-Files, in this case, Season 7, Episode 20, entitled Fight Club, which is an episode with a very manic tone in which Kathy Griffin plays twins that cause chaos whenever they cross paths. I do feel like this is a well-directed episode, and The X-Files pedigree alone is not something I take lightly, though Fight Club is far from one of my favorite episodes, and this is due to its meandering script, uneven tone, and honestly, casting. But I'm sure Supernatural doesn't know anything about adding a well-known and divisive redhead to shake things up.
What's up, bitches?
Following an episode about a Jesus freak that enslaves a reaper to kill gay people and pro-choice activists, the crew at Supernatural use Route 666 to complete a 2-episode streak of episodes that deal with heavier political notions they will never revisit or touch upon again. This episode opens with a racist phantom truck committing a hate crime on a black man driving along an isolated road in Missouri. Equally shocking, they actually show these cars smashing together until the victim's car barrel rolls off an embankment. And look, real stunts and property destruction are so rare over the span of the show, it shouldn't be astounding to me, but once you get to those later seasons, this shit looks like fucking French Connection. Wait a second, who are these guys? More ghosts? When we catch up with Sam and Dean, they are headed towards Pennsylvania when Dean gets a call from a woman named Cassie, a former lover, and the daughter of the victim in the cold open. Sam desperately tries to, have a little girl talk. Who's this Cassie? You guys, play Mario Party? Did you let her steal your star? Dean tries to downplay the relationship and retain his strong, silent exterior, but he does let it slip that he told her about the family business. The whole show, very quickly explains away why what they do is a secret. And while there are certain points down the line where it would be absurd if most of the world's population didn't have some idea of the supernatural existing, they treat knowledge of the supernatural as if it's some Lovecraftian revelation that nobody can learn and remain unchanged. So Sam is clearly aghast that Dean did this, bringing up the fact that he never told Jess about any of that, which they paint as a failing in Dean, but it kind of just makes it seem like he was more willing to open himself up and be vulnerable with someone, while Sam was not. Look, RIP and all, F's in the chat for Jess, but how close could you two have really been if you didn't feel it necessary to mention that you were raised as a child soldier in your father's insane vengeance-fueled crusade against monsters? Yeah, just food for thought. When they show up to meet Cassie, who works for the local newspaper, she and her co-worker Jimmy are confronted by the mayor, who doesn't want them to print the story of her father's death quite exactly as it happened. It's good to see this guy has recovered from being abducted in Season 1, Episode 10, Fallen Angel. Season 1, Episode 10 of The X-Files. They think evidence suggests this is a pattern of hate crimes, but the mayor insists this can't be the case, and they're probably just upset with grief. This mayor, by the way, appears in an episode of The X-Files, which seems to come up a lot. Episode 3 of Season 1, Squeeze.
You got it. Spooky.
And then appears in the first episode of the next season, Little Green Men, where he plays one of the many random FBI agents that spy on Mulder.
Please explain why you're here.
I was told by the assistant director that Mulder was gone.
So?
Sorry, I was just distracted. Later that night, Cassie explains that her father expressed paranoia that a ghostly black truck had been following him for a while before his death, and that the previous victim was a friend of her father's. Both died in their vehicles after apparently being struck by something that didn't leave tracks. I do love that they really give Dean a lot of acting to do in this episode. He's got to show a lot of sides we haven't seen yet. The tension between him and Cassie during their conversation is depicted really well. He tries to keep their interactions professional, but the unfinished business between them often slips through.
If I remember, I think you said I was nuts.
That was then.
For most of the series, Dean is a bit of a stinky boy. Yeah, he just wants to shoot monsters, eat pizza, and but this is different.
Oh, wow. She dumped you. In the car.
He's clearly emotionally affected a great deal by being around Cassie, or Cassie, as the mayor seems to say.
I know you're upset, Cassie.
Accidents do happen, Cassie. That's what they are.
After this conversation, Jimmy is murdered under the exact same circumstances, and despite being the third black man to die in the exact same way, the mayor doesn't want anything done about it or said about it, insisting that all 3 deaths were accidents. When Cassie suggests that he would be calling for action were the victim's white, he says,
I'm the last person you should talk to like that.
Why is that?
Why don't you ask your mother?
I like this next scene a lot because there is something special and adorable about Sam and Dean talking about girls while putting their FBI costumes on. Like, you never see this. It seems like a peek behind the curtain of what happens when the camera isn't fixated on the hunt. If I was writing this show, there'd be a scene like this in almost every episode where the boys just get real. You think they'll ever fix my hair, Dean? You ever wonder how we always end up in the same shitty motel set where they just push the furniture into different configurations? They question a friend of Jimmy's who tells them of a similar string of murders involving a black truck, but this was in the 1960s. I don't know what the deal with Sam is in this episode. Just the intense pleasure he seems to get at seeing Dean and Cassie together. Can't tell if it's sweet or something else. You really gotta get over Jess, buddy. Just get on Tinder. Meet somebody who's not gonna burn up and explode. Sam eventually pressures Dean to visit Cassie without him so they can work out whatever weird tension is lingering between them, which they— oh no! Oh god, no! Oh no! There are surprisingly few scenes like this one, but for some reason most of them occur in the early seasons. One fun bit of trivia I came across about this scene was that the editor claims that despite this episode being about a racist ghost truck that kills several people rather violently, the network only gave them one note when they submitted the episode. For some reason, they did not want a shot of Cassie being on top in their sex scene. I can't begin to unwrap the reasoning behind that. Can't think of any good reason other than that it might obstruct your view of a shirtless Jensen. In any case, they did not listen to this note and did it anyway. And as we all know, the show was unceremoniously canceled shortly after. The truck claims another victim in the mayor, breaking the pattern completely by killing a white man off the main roads who didn't even make it to his car. The only link they can find is that he was killed on property that used to be owned by Cyrus Dorian, a guy that went missing in the 60s around the time the original truck murders were happening. The mayor had purchased the land and bulldozed the house that once stood there, and the first new killings happened the next day. The standout scene in this episode, which comes out of nowhere, is the conversation with Cassie's mother. It's a rather emotional and powerfully performed exposition dump that answers most of the episode's primary questions. Cyrus was a homicidal, jealous, and racist ex-boyfriend of Cassie's mother, who was, as she put it, changed by the revelation that she was dating a black man. He was responsible for several murders, as well as a church burning that resulted in several children dying, all of which left uninvestigated. The only reason the killing stopped was because Cassie's father killed Cyrus in an act of self-defense, with all of the other eventual victims helping to cover up his death by pushing the truck into a swamp.
Why didn't you call the cops?
Dean, buddy, you're better than this. Come on. The mayor, who was then just a cop, learned about all this happening but chose to remain silent. It's all way too heavy for the tone of the show, but impressive nonetheless. They really went for it with this one, which is not something they often do. There are a lot of things about Route 666 that I think are the result of fresh eyes on the series, and eyes that are familiar with how shows like this work, but maybe not the trajectory they've been going on. Sam gets a monologue about how things used to be simple when he was back in college, which, like, he never fucking talks about. Who even remembers he was gonna be a lawyer? Weird.
I saw this killer truck.
I miss conversations that didn't start with this killer truck.
There's a part where Dean talks about the burden of being a hunter, always moving, never getting to experience things and form connections with others, which I can't, off the top of my head, remember another time he talks about that so candidly. This may also lead to some early, I couldn't even say errors with the lore, more like ideas that were abandoned, so in retrospect, they seem like mistakes. Either way, it's actually kind of fun watching them work out a way to defeat the truck ghost. Dean, we gotta stop the killer truck! They go to salt and burn the remains of Cyrus, which doesn't appear to have any effect on the truck. So Sam takes a shot in the dark that getting it to drive over the hollowed ground of the church that burned down would destroy it, which it does. It feels smart within the context of the episode, but this is also an idea that never returns. Sam's feigned assurance that this would work makes for a great moment between the two.
Figured maybe that would get rid of it.
Maybe. Maybe? What if you were wrong?
They are both at peak chemistry still, and it's honestly really fun watching them. Also, it seems like they got their cinematographer back or something. I feel like the last couple episodes have been, not terrible episodes, but far less atmospheric than the first handful. And this one is back to everything being drenched in darkness, lots of intense shadows cast on people. Even when they're outside during the day, it's clearly overcast and lightly raining. And this led me to the discovery that Supernatural has had the same director of photography for nearly its entire run, which only confuses me further how the show could look so wildly different depending on what season you're watching. At a certain point, he must have just been like, what if the show just didn't have a vibe? You know what I mean? Like, one asshole on the internet is gonna care when it's gone, so what does it matter? Dean and Cassie properly say goodbye this time, making no promises to meet up again, but agreeing that stranger things have happened. And I personally hope these two find their way back to each other. I think this is another pretty good episode with a really strong performance within it. I want to say they treat the subject matter somewhat maturely, but it's also very tame. And then when I think, how could they have approached it more seriously, I remember that this is a show on the CW and the current episode is about a killer truck, so I guess who gives a shit.
Blink or something.
You loved her. Oh, God. Now, look, man, everybody's got to open up to someone sometime.
Yeah, I don't.
In my work, I see some horrible things.